In this last episode in 2023 for Third Eyesight podcast, I answer 2 listener emails that I received for the podcast, and I go over 3 things that I learned as a psychic medium in 2023. Just to let you know, this podcast will be on hiatus during December 2023, and we'll be back in early January 2024. So here's to the last episode of 2023 of Third Eyesight. My name is Juan Francisco, and I'm a psychic medium and tarot card reader. I've always been curious about the supernatural, the paranormal, and psychic abilities, and I'm here to share my stories and interview folks who want to share their own stories with us. Let's get to it. Okay, so the last episode of Third Eyesight for 2023. This is going to be episode 94, which is insane. And I wanted to really focus on this episode on things that I've learned this year as a psychic medium. But before we go into all that, I just want to say, first of all, I am live on Instagram for just a little bit, so folks can hear a sneak peek of the last episode of my podcast this year for 2023. I'm going to take a break for the month of December. So this episode will come out, can I do math? On November 29th, Wednesday, November 29th. And the new season, I don't even do seasons really, but the next iteration of Third Eyesight podcast, I can't speak today. Third Eyesight podcast will be in January 2024. So I'm going to take a break for the month of December, the beginning of January, and I'll be back with a really special interview that I think is going to happen this week. I'm really excited for this interview. We will start January 2024 with a bang, with a really great interview with a psychic medium. And I have another interview coming in February or March with a psychic medium who used to be a private investigator, which is really, really cool. A private investigator / psychic medium. Really cool. So before we get into this episode, this last episode of 2023, I just want to say thank you all for all the listening and the love with the podcast, and listeners who send in their questions and their emails. And I've mentioned this, I think, before, at least on social media. I'm not sure if I mentioned it on this podcast yet, so remind me if I have. But we are about to reach 10,000 downloads of Third Eyesight in its history. And I'm going to say it again, and I actually heard another podcast talk about this. 10,000 downloads is not a lot, but for a guy who records his podcast in his studio apartment in New York City with no fancy background, no fancy sound studio, it's just me and my microphone, 10,000 downloads is pretty cool. So right now we're at 99,790 podcast downloads of Third Eyesight. I'm going to discount the downloads of the trailer of the podcast, which is like a 3-minute thing. So really, I want to get to 10,200 downloads, and that's when I will count it as 10,000 downloads of Third Eyesight. So when we get there, I will post about it. I will celebrate it. I'll let you all know in the new year, 2024, that we have hit 10,000 downloads. I'm pretty sure we'll hit it because it's on a pretty good trajectory. And this podcast is getting quite a bit of downloads per week. It's pretty incredible. So thank you all for listening. And if you really like this podcast, for the month of December, tell your friends about this podcast. Tell your family members, people who you think are into this stuff, people who are skeptical but are curious about this stuff. Get them to catch up on this podcast while it is not publishing any new episodes in the month of December. December is the perfect catch-up month. Folks are traveling, going home to see family for the holidays, or people are isolating themselves and staying to themselves in December because they don't want to be part of the crazy noise of the holidays. Perfect time to catch up on episodes. So, I am going to stay on live here on Instagram on my phone for a bit. I'm going to answer some listener questions or read some listener emails. And I'm going to take my magic computer. You're going to hear some clicks, y'all. I'm going to go to this email that I received from somebody, and I did ask them if I could read it on the podcast, asked for their permission to include their name, but I haven't received their permission yet, but I would like to read it and address it. Hey, Natalie, namaste, live on Instagram. Hey, my love. Hi, Natalie, who is a huge inspiration for this podcast, by the way. So, hey, Natalie. So I received this email mid-November, and I would like to read it, but I'm not going to name the person because I have not yet gotten the permission to read their email out loud. I will be careful what I share from this email. If something really identifies them in this email, I will try to be mindful of that and not say it. But I really wanted to answer this person's email. I did answer them myself personally. I sent them a little response message on my own, and then I asked them if I could read it out loud. So here we go, but I'm not going to name the person out of respect for them. Hi, Juan. I only began listening to your shows last week. I heard about you on a review somewhere. I'm kind of wondering where, guys. Anyways, I find your podcast and style to be exactly what I have been looking for. That's great to hear. I've been a bit quote unquote different since I was a kid. I remember my first experience seeing shadow people when I was about 4 and remembering not being afraid. I've lived in 3 homes which have had quite interactive spirits in them and always felt safe. I've had so many experiences throughout my life. They put in parentheses, I'm now an old fart. I'm not going to put their age just in case because they do mention their age, but I'll just say they feel they are an old fart. In the past 2 years, I've been delving into my spirituality, but remaining grounded and making sure I remain the person I've always been. I would not at all say I'm a medium yet, but have a strong intuition and have for all of my life had friends and total strangers spill their guts to me with their life stories and difficulties they're having in life. I've always taken the time to listen to them and really enjoy it. I sustained a couple of spinal injuries working I'm gonna censor this part of the email because I don't want to identify them because I don't have their permission to name them. So I'll just say I sustained a couple of spinal injuries working. Let's leave it at that. And was medically retired a couple of years ago. I have taken it as a sign to follow my spiritual path as I have plenty of time, being that I don't work and live with severe chronic pain. Because your mediumship is fairly new to you, your podcasts resonate with me. I just finished the episode with Ray, the energy medium. If you haven't listened to that episode, everybody, it's a great episode. I love Ray. She has her own podcast, which is great. Ray, the energy medium. This person said, you both seem quite similar in your approach to spirituality, and I really enjoyed listening to it. I could ramble on to you for ages, but I'm sure you're very busy and receive lots of messages like this. I don't. I'm not that popular, but it's fine. I just thought I'd reach out from the land down under. So this is pretty generic because there are a lot of people in Australia, and I have quite a few Australian listeners. So I just thought I'd reach out from the land down under, Australia, say good day and thank you. If you get a chance to reply, that'd be tops. If not, I totally understand. Keep up the great work. Never stop learning, and keep in mind everyone in caps, everyone, no matter how young or old, has something to teach us. Well, listener, thank you so much for your message. I know I responded back to you, and I just am so appreciative that I appreciate so much that this podcast means so much to you and that you appreciate it yourself. And this is what I'm here to do. I'm here, and I said this in my email to you directly. I am here, and this is for every listener. I am here doing what I'm doing because I want people to ask the questions with me. I have my own questions about the other side, about death and dying and the supernatural. And I find it also fascinating, especially in this secularized culture we live in, in which these things really aren't top of mind for people in our culture. We don't function in society with this being at the front of our consciousness all the time, the supernatural and the beyond. And I want to dig into that because it is still semi-taboo, but people are warming up to it, but it's still pretty niche and taboo. So I kind of want to break through that and ask the questions and have people tell their stories, because more people experience extraordinary things than people who don't. I actually was listening to the Happiness Lab. It's a podcast by Dr. Laurie Santos. I'm obsessed with that podcast. And she interviewed this gentleman who is a psychologist and researcher, I believe. And he was citing a study that said that at least 35% of people in a Gallup, I think it was a Gallup poll or some other kind of research, 35% of people say they've experienced something beyond, like that they can't explain. something non-physical, something supernatural or bigger than what feels like it's bigger than them. So this podcast, Third Eyesight, that I'm hosting, that you're listening to right now, this is what I do that for. I want to talk about these things because there are so many people who have experienced things that they feel is beyond them, that they can't explain. So to you, listener, who sent in this email, this is what I do it for feedback. Well, I don't do it to get feedback like this, but it's feedback like this that reflects my intention in doing this podcast. So thank you for your email. I'm going to read one more email. This is from Alyssa on Instagram, and she emailed me her DM because I wanted to make sure I didn't lose it. So Alyssa, hey hey Juan, thanks for being so open on your live. I had been on live when she had sent this message. Do you think on your podcast you can go over how you trained yourself to really silence your mind? I can find meditation impossible. I also feel like my quote unquote Wi-Fi is open all the time and I need a VPN, quote unquote. How do you protect yourself from getting random energies all the time? For those of you who don't know, VPN is sort of like a protective, I don't know anything about technological terms, but it's like a internet firewall thing. I've used a VPN before. Helps you navigate the internet securely. So how do you protect yourself from getting random energies all the time? How did you get to the point where you could choose when you want to tap in and strongly direct that energy? I do the breathwork thing, but I defocus pretty fast trying to practice. Sorry for all the questions that I hope you address, or maybe you've addressed some of these already in your podcast. But when you're going psychic, who do you think is talking to you? Because when I have these feelings, I don't know if it's coming from me or the other person or what exactly I'm tapping into. What are your thoughts? Okay, so Alyssa, I'm going to see what questions I can more directly address. So how did I train myself to silence my mind? Let's address that question first. It's not easy. It's not easy to silence the mind. But what has really worked for me that I've learned from mentors of mine who are also mediums is breath work. If I feel like I am losing concentration, I'm going to do a deep inhale and do an equally deep exhale. And I just bump my mic. Sorry if y'all heard the boom, boom, boom on my microphone. I just bumped it with my hand. Inhale and exhale deeply. So I do that in the middle of a reading. I'll do that on Instagram Live. People will see me do that on my Instagram Live when I lose focus. I will do a deep inhale, a deep exhale. And I try to tell myself gently just to release every thought, every preconception, every complaint that's going on in my mind at the moment. Complaints including, why am I not getting somebody right now? Why am I not tapping into the other side right now? Letting go of even that, just letting things flow. It's easier said than done. And for those of us who have struggled with anxiety, it's something that I feel personally, I'm still working on it. And I still overthink things a lot as I'm doing readings. So that's what I do, is I use the breath. Inhale, exhale deeply. And this is why I think it is so important to join a practice circle or a mediumship circle or a psychic circle, whatever it is. Whatever you want to practice, if you could find a practice group related to that, what am I trying to say? That method of practice you want to do, that thing, that field, seek it out. Join that group, because you can practice all these things that may feel funky to you. Like you could breathe in and out in front of that group and not feel weird about it. And you'll realize that it's normal for people to take that moment to breathe. It's normal for people to find their thing that works for them to tune in at the moment. Some people rub their hands like this. They do this as they're trying to channel. I personally don't resonate with that. For me, it's all about the breath. That's what works for me. And you'll find the thing that works for you too. Some people hold crystals. You'll find your thing. For me, it's the breath. Let's see. How do you protect yourself from getting random energies all the time? How did you get to the point where you could choose when you want to tap in and strongly direct the energy? So this is the thing. I have known people, and I know of mediums who cannot, they say they cannot control their tapping in, tapping out. They just choose to listen or not listen. I'm not like that. I am not built that way. I was thinking about this yesterday. I was watching The Amazing Race with my family yesterday in their living room in their home. And I'm just sitting there just watching the show and eating some chocolate chip cookies or whatever dessert I was eating. Nutella, whatever it was. And I'm not sitting around, always thinking about ghosts and the other side and mediumship. I'm just watching TV, eating Nutella. So for someone like me, I don't live my life every minute feeling like there's a ghost around me or there's a supernatural entity or a loved one or grandma. I don't live that way. And I want to say it's really no choice of mine. It's just the way I am. That may change in years to come. Maybe one day it will just be like an onslaught and I'll learn to develop that skill. But I'll be honest that now I don't have that issue, or I don't have that challenge of trying to tap out because it all feels like it's too much. I feel like spirit does respect us. And even for those who feel like they cannot tap out, deciding to not listen to what's coming through, spirit will respect that you do not want to listen to it at the moment. That's my experience of what I've learned from watching other psychic mediums on TV or reading some books. And there are ways to work with spirit to create boundaries. So set those boundaries the way you would with a human being. That's really important. The other question you had, when you're going psychic, who do you think is talking to you? You said you don't know if it's coming from you or the other person or what you're tapping into. What are your thoughts? So there's going mediumistically, going into mediumship and going into psychic abilities. So what I've been talking about up to this point is mediumship abilities and practicing mediumship. Mediumship, it's coming from the souls of those who have passed. And also universal consciousness. I believe it's all one. When we pass, we become one with everything. But in order for the human beings that we've left behind to recognize who we are and what message is coming through, we need to represent ourselves as we are remembered. Come forward in the way that a human will remember us, as mother, as father. That gets into a whole heady topic, philosophical topic. I'm not going to go into it now, but mediumship, you're tapping into universal consciousness and or guides and or loved ones, the souls of loved ones who have passed. With psychic ability, working psychically, it's soul to soul, human soul to human soul. So if I'm doing a psychic reading for you, the listener, I am tapping my soul energy, and my intuition is tapping into your soul energy. And it is more of a person-to-person thing. So those messages, to start, those messages are coming from the person's aura, the person's energy. However, this is where it gets a little tricky, because I do believe that in psychic readings, some of the mediumship can come in. If I'm in a psychic reading and I say, this is what I'm seeing in your energy, also your guides are telling me. It's not the same as saying your mother's telling me, but you are tapping into an external intelligent source. So that's where it gets a little gray area. And I don't think there's a right or wrong, but if we want to just be very basic about it and just talk about psychic is person soul to person soul, human soul to human soul readings. It's not the same as, it's like kind of like seeing eye to eye. Psychically is seeing eye to eye on a soul level, human to human. Whereas mediumistic readings, mediumship is human to higher up. That makes sense. So I hope that helps, Alyssa. I hope that helps address your questions and let me know what you think. I will send you an email to let you know that this is coming up on Wednesday's podcast, because I'm filming this on a Sunday, but it's going to be a Wednesday's podcast. So I'll send Alyssa an email to let her know that it will have been answered. So before I go on to the 3 things I have learned as a psychic medium in 2023, I'm going to close the Instagram live, because this is just a sneak peek for you Instagram folks. This episode is coming out on Wednesday, November 29th. Okay? So I'll just say bye to my Instagram folks, and I'll come back to you podcast folks in just a second. Bye, Instagram. Bye. Okay, so podcast folks, devoted podcast folks who are not just following me on Instagram, but also listening to the podcast. And if you're not following me on Instagram, Juan Third Eye. So let me switch my screens here. Oh, my hair. Oh my goodness. I haven't been able to look at myself in the camera because I've been focusing on Instagram and emails, but I got to fix this hair. There we go. Hair is fixed. There we go. And in case you're wondering, those listening through your headphones but not looking at a video, there are video versions on YouTube of this podcast, which is why I just fixed my hair. All right, let's get on topic, Juan. The 3 things I have learned as a psychic medium this year. Number one, sometimes you're never going to feel ready. I think when I started doing this work almost 2 years ago on a professional level, I wasn't really sure what I was getting into. I knew what mediumship was. I knew what a psychic reading was. I had practiced psychic readings for a year before that, almost a year before that. But I didn't really know what it was going to be like to do this on a public level. And I really started with this podcast before I really, really delved into doing readings for people publicly. Now, most of you know who've listened to this podcast since the beginning or who have heard the first episode of the podcast that the way this all started for me was seemingly spontaneous, but it happened when it needed to, according to the universe, according to God and spirit. I was surprised and shocked that I was channeling the energy of a deceased loved one in the middle of a tarot card reading. And then the rest is history. And that day when I had that surprise moment, that shocking moment in that tarot card reading, or after it rather, right after the tarot card reading is when it happened, I just felt like I wasn't worth this task. And I quickly learned that everybody's worth this task. Everyone can channel their loved ones. Everyone can channel people's loved ones, I believe. Maybe to different degrees, different strengths, different levels, depending on, number one, your nature. Were you born with a heightened ability or propensity to this? Number two, nurture. Have you developed the skill? Were you raised to develop the skill? So many factors. And sometimes we just don't feel ready to do the thing. And I think it's really important to practice and to learn. So one of the first things I did when I realized I have this ability is joined a practice circle. I did not start doing readings immediately because I felt like I wouldn't feel good doing that. So I think between following your heart and knowing when you're ready for something, those are two very important things. But also, you may not feel ready, but your heart says, this is exciting, let's do it. And that's when I think it's okay to jump into it. What's the worst that's going to happen? Let's say you do it. You jump into things. You just realize you're a medium and you jump into doing readings for people publicly. The worst that can happen, which I would avoid doing this because for me, on an ethical level, it's good to get the practice in before you just jump into doing readings when it's only been a month since you discovered this ability. But let's say you jump into doing readings for people publicly. The worst that can happen is someone doesn't like the way you read, or someone says that you're too new or you're not good at communicating. Okay, well, that stinks. Lesson learned. It's always a process of learning. So really, it's a matter of following your heart and knowing whether you're ready or not. And that sometimes you may have your heart telling you that it's an exciting moment to do this thing, but you don't feel ready and you do it anyways. And that is mostly when fear is involved. When fear is involved, that's when you know, I'm listening to my heart a little more. As long as that fear isn't pointing you to any existential or any external physical danger or danger of harming somebody in any way, shape, or form, there's no need to listen to that fear. So number one, what I learned this year as a psychic medium is sometimes you just don't feel ready, but it's time to do the thing. And I think that I especially learned that when I did my first mediumship demonstration, which funny enough, I thought was a disaster. Not a disaster, that's dramatic. If on a level, on a scale from 1 to 10, I thought it was like a 6 or a 7. I felt not good about it. I felt not great about it. But my mentor and people who went told me that was a 9. Some said, I think one person said it was a 10, but I would say most people felt like it was a 9 out of 10. And that's pretty awesome. But I was so hard on myself, and I'm still hard on myself. And I want to learn to not be so hard on myself. But it was me feeling, I felt ready to do the demonstration, but the day of the demonstration, I almost felt like, am I really doing this? And afterwards, I just kept thinking, why did I do that? Maybe I shouldn't have done that. I don't know. Fear is a fear is a villain, for me at least. For someone like me who struggles with anxiety, as I mentioned earlier, fear for me is huge, unfortunately. So number one, sometimes you don't feel ready, but it's the time to do it. Number one thing I've learned as a medium this year. Number two, and I'm doing these on the fly, by the way. Number two, I think number two for me would be context is everything. The way I communicate as a medium doesn't sit in a silo or a vacuum separate from everything else going on in people's lives or the world. It's important to be aware of when I'm saying what. I got a lot of love in the Third Eye broadcast channel, which is on Instagram. You can join it. Where someone said in response to a prompt that I put up that I should feel encouraged to not let people's judgments get to me, or I'm going to totally word this the wrong way, but what they meant to say, I'm going to paraphrase them, is just stick to what my intentions are and not worry about what people think of what I say. And I think that person may have shared that as it related to the episode / Instagram post about death being an equalizer. The episode that I filmed in the cemetery, and I used the death is an equalizer line as the clip to promote that podcast episode. And I understand what they're saying. Just stick to your intention, and just that's all you need to worry about. But I also feel that I have a responsibility as someone who works with the topic of death. And it sounds so morbid to say that, but I do. I work with the topic of death. As someone who is in that position, I think I have a responsibility to be smart with my words, smart with when I say my words, and to apologize when I make a mistake or when I may have hurt somebody. And I think that is the number two thing that I've learned this year as a psychic medium, is being aware of the context in which I'm saying something, and being aware of what's going on out there in the world, especially when it involves tragedy. And I am definitely taking that with me into 2024 because, honey, there's no comparison. I've never a need or a time to compare tragedies of any kind, but and I don't know what could be worse than what's going on right now in the world. And 2024, there's going to be a lot of things happening with politics in America, and I hope there is no more. I hope the tragedy ends very soon. And I know 2024, with elections coming up in the USA, the United States. Did I say Canada before, or did I say United States? I don't know if I said America. I'm losing it. I think I'm losing my mind. It's a little late over here in New York City. But if I said Canada, what I meant to say was United States. The elections in the United States in 2024. There's going to be a lot of that. And I need to be mindful of what I say when. And if there's something in the news from a political candidate that has to do with death or people who are suffering, I have to be mindful of how I talk about that. I know it to many people, it sounds like I'm just catering to people's triggers. But I do think I have a responsibility. And I'm the first person to say that I own my own triggers, and other people are not responsible for my triggers or how I react to my triggers. And I just think that death is such an important and such a delicate subject. And I have that responsibility to be delicate with that subject and careful. That's number 2. Number 3. What's number 3? Oh, I know what number 3 is. And this was a pretty rude awakening this year, and I'm still waking up. Number 3 thing that I learned as a psychic medium in 2023 is that self-love is a huge key to becoming a better medium. I have been doing mediumship for almost 2 years now. Is it 2 years? Yeah, 2 years. Practicing it, doing it as a profession. And I've been doing mediumship for the last 2 years with all my insecurities, all my anxieties, all my self-loathing, sometimes self-hatred, if I'm honest, in the last 2 years. And I have delivered messages, and I've brought forward people's loved ones throughout all of those moments. So yeah, I can do mediumship while being a self-loathing, highly anxious, insecure person. I could do reading still. But for me, this is my personal experience. I'm not commenting on any other medium's experience or your experience as a listener. My personal learning this year, for me, is the more that I love and appreciate myself and value myself, the better my readings will be. And it's hard to say that because my mind says, because the easy thing to do is to not love myself. That's the easy thing to do, to not appreciate myself, to not value myself or see my worth, to not love myself unconditionally. That's the easy thing to do. The challenging thing for me, based on how I'm wired, conditioned, is to love and appreciate myself. And by loving and appreciating myself, I'm not caring what people think about me, or they think I'm a fake, or they think I'm not a good enough medium. I'm just staying the course and doing what I feel I love to do, which is be of service to this craft, to spirit, to do readings. And I think there's so much self-confidence and self-love that warrants. That warrants that self-love and self-confidence to do things bravely and to do things with so much conviction and belief and faith. Not just faith in spirit, but also faith in myself. And like I said, I could keep doing readings and not work on myself as a person for the rest of my life. But I think by loving and appreciating myself more, I won't doubt myself as much. I won't doubt my ability as much. And I will treat other people and clients, I think, better. I think I will see people better. There's that RuPaul line that, what is it? I'm going to ruin it. I'm going to ruin the line. If you don't love yourself, how the hell are you going to love anybody else? There are some relationship experts and advice people that say you don't have to love yourself completely to love somebody else. And I agree with that. You don't have to love yourself completely to fall in love or be in love with somebody else or to love other people. But I think that loving yourself makes a relationship of any kind that much easier. Because you are seeing the value in yourself with all your flaws, all your imperfections, and you can see that another person who, other people, someone that you're friends with, in love with, whatever, family member, they may be imperfect, but you love them anyways, even with their imperfections. That's outside of any relationships where there needs to be strict boundaries because of safety. I'm not talking about those. But now I'm going into a rabbit hole. But I think you know what I mean. Me loving and appreciating myself more is going to help me be more vulnerable as a person, be more comfortable being vulnerable, being myself with my clients, with people on Instagram, being myself on social media. It's like it's juicier, if that makes sense. Like my authenticity will be that much juicier because I like myself more. And I can't believe I'm saying this, talking about these things the way I am right now, because a year ago, 2 years ago, I would have thought there's no reason for me to talk about self-love as it relates to mediumship. And I definitely attribute, I have Daisy of Earth Angel Crystal to thank for this. Daisy at Earth Angel Crystal is someone that you probably see me tag quite often on Instagram because I'm at her store all the time. But she was also my mentor for several months leading up to my demonstration. And she has taught me that the inner child work is so important for mediumship because it helps to remove those doubts and fears and insecurities and not believing in oneself. Spirit will do all the work to help a medium channel. But that's the thing, the medium is the channel. If you pour water into a clay pot that's about to break down, there's a huge risk of that water bursting, and the clay pot doesn't do the function that it is created to do. But if you have that clay pot that even if it has some cracks, it has been repaired, it has been the cracks have been filled. It may not look the most beautiful because those cracks are filled in, but it's doing a dang good job of pouring that water. That's how I see mediumship and being a human being. I am a channel for spirit, yes, and the water will still flow through. But if I'm not careful, I may not be at my best if I'm continuing to self-loathe, self-hate, to doubt myself. The water may burst. And I may contaminate the reading, number one, or I may misinterpret the message coming through because I'm so nervous and I'm so insecure. I'm feeling so insecure about what I'm doing. I think you get the picture. That's number 3. So to recap, number 1, knowing when you feel ready to do something, but also knowing when you don't feel ready, but your heart says it's an exciting time to do it, and there's no need to be afraid. Number 2, to know the context in which you're saying something about death and mediumship, and to be mindful of what people are going through on a mass scale, or even what a client is going through. And number 3, self-love leads to stronger mediumship. Now, folks can disagree with me on any one of those or all of those. That's okay. Those are my personal learnings this year. And my mind may change about anything in the next year, in the next 5 years, 10 years. But as of now, looking back at 2023, these are 3 important things I've learned. And I think that makes the last podcast of 2023 of Third Eyesight. I'm really excited for 2024. I am definitely going to do a little bit more social media flair, marketing kind of stuff with my business. I really want to invest more energy in my business as a reader and as a podcaster. And I'm going to let you all in on a little idea I have that I haven't fleshed out yet. I'm not going to say too much about it, but I may teach something in 2024, and that would be available to all of you. I may do a teaching thing. Let's see what happens, like a seminar. And if that's something you're excited about, DM me, email me. If you've listened to this and you heard me say that, and you're excited about the idea of me teaching something, let me know. So that may happen in 2024. What is definitely going to happen, this I can definitely confirm, is I'm going to start doing virtual mediumship demonstrations in 2024. Like 30 people, 40 people in a Zoom room where I am doing readings for people for an hour to an hour and a half. Sort of like what I did in person for like 10 people at Earth Angel Crystal, but taking it onto to the virtual stage so more people from across the globe can access it and can attend it. So be on the lookout for that. that should be happening relatively soon in the next 4 months. Let's see what happens. And of course, more podcast episodes. And I am on the prowl for new interviewees. So if you want to hear from somebody that you know, if you have an interviewee that whom you want to suggest to me to be on Third Eyesight, email me, DM me. I would love to get ideas. I am doing my own research though. I'm not going to put all the onus or the burden on my listeners. I am doing the research myself as well on Instagram. I'm listening to podcasts and thinking, ooh, I want to get that person on my podcast. So I'm going to be sending those emails out in the next month or two to those potential interviewees. I already have two. I'm doing 3 interviews in the next 3 weeks. And I just did an interview last week or 2 weeks ago. So I'm on a roll. Things are happening. But I do want to collect more interviewees for the rest of 2024. So I leave you with this note, this final note of, if you celebrate the holidays, happy holidays. Otherwise, have a beautiful end to your 2023. I wish you a beautiful start to your 2024. And I will see you again on Third Eyesight in 2024. If you have a question or topic you want me to cover on Third Eyesight, head to my website, juanfranciscospirit.com/contact, and send a message my way. If you really enjoyed this episode, leave a review wherever you listen. I'd really appreciate it.